Okay, so Hebrews chapter 12, we have been looking at running, and last week we began on Run Your Adventure, and we're going to do Run Your Adventure part 2. And Hebrews chapter 12, we read these words. It says, therefore, this is Paul writing to the Hebrews. If you think Paul wrote Hebrews, let's stick with that for today. Paul, writing to the Hebrews, he says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. So he's talking about all those guys that are listed in Hebrews chapter 11. Since we're surrounded by all these guys, since they have preceded us, since they have done their job and they're now cheering us on, since we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And if anybody has a napkin or anything they can throw up to me, I would really appreciate that there. So let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us run. John Eldridge, some of the guys in the Azure team, we've been reading this book, Wild at Heart. And in Wild at Heart, John Eldridge writes these words. He says, life is not a problem to be solved, but, and thank you, out of everybody, that's my hero right there. See the rest, I'm just going to preach the Ice this morning. The rest of you can do whatever you want. Thank you, Ice, appreciate it. Life is not a problem to be solved, but an adventure to be lived. Life is not a problem to be solved, but an adventure to be lived. And I think sometimes for a lot of us, maybe we live our lives that way, and like there's so many problems, or we got to fix things, and we forget that there's an adventure to be lived out. And so he's telling us life is not a problem to be solved, but life is an adventure to be lived. I think hopefully the next photograph, we're struggling here with our photographs and everything get messed up. Is it a photograph of a pig? So a few years ago, a number of the men went on a trip. Well, we went on like a weekend up to this field in Newcastle. And that's a pig on a spit. I think there's a photograph in the reception of a number of us, and we're kind of gathered around this pig. The night turned out to be, you ever read Lord of the Flies? For any of the guys, maybe you're in Boys Model and you read Lord of the Flies, or anything, but it's just read that book. This is kind of like what it turned out to be. So we're in this field in Newcastle, up and around the Mourne Mountains, and some of the guys thought we'll get a pig and we'll feed the men that night. And as you can see, the pig is huge and the fire is tiny. And the pig didn't cook. And what kind of happened is time went on because we were starving. And it's getting late at night and we hadn't had anything to eat. And it got to the stage where we're kind of like trying to drop the pig like pretty much on top of the fire, right in the fire. Were you there, William? You were. Anyone that's there will know, you know, and we'll have a story to tell. And the pig was either raw or it was going to be burnt to a cinder. But I remember, you know, somebody had the bright idea, let's cut a piece off and see if it's worked, if it's edible. And as whoever it was cut the bit of meat off, it kind of like sent out this aroma of pork being fried, which is really, really nice smell whenever you're starving. Then I'm not joking, all the fellas like, oh, and I really wanted a piece of this pig that wasn't cooked right. And we ended up, you know, I'll never forget the thing just sitting on top of the fire with its hooves like this and its tongue out, and just watching this pig just right sat on top of the fire. And we ended up just cutting chunks off and trying to cook it, and it was an absolute disaster. And what came out of that weekend, we slept under the stars that night. I'll never forget sleeping under the stars. There was no other lights and just seeing all these stars just firing across the sky, all these shooting stars. Some of the men decided to jump ship, and they went for home at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I will not name any names, but the rest of us slept under the stars and bivouacs. And there was a saying that came out of that weekend. You remember what it was? Pastor left his flock was one of them. The other one was, it's an adventure. It's an adventure. This became our motto for that weekend, which basically meant everything's get messed up. It's all going wrong because we didn't prepare properly, or Sherry Sinclair and Johnny Prentice never prepared properly, but that's another story. And this became our motto. It's an adventure. It's an adventure. And I believe that life should be an adventure. I don't believe, I'm in agreement with John Eldridge that life shouldn't be boxed in. And, I don't know, John Eldridge tells a story in the book of him and his family. And they go up, there's a lot of stories of him going around the wilderness, around the Colorado Rockies and that there, and getting up to all sorts, out camping. And he tells a story of how him and his family go for a walk, and there's this place where they can jump off rocks into a lake. And a number of years ago, there was a group of us went up to, at Easter time, we went up to Tullymore Forest, and the next photograph, that's me. And the rock is like, I don't know, maybe 50 feet high, give or take a couple of feet, 50 to 75 feet high, it's like taller than this building. That's how high that was that I jumped off. But as you walk up Tullymore for one of the pathways, there's a place where you can jump off into the water. It was a lovely day, but the water was absolutely freezing. And John Eldridge tells a similar story of him and his family and being up, and they jumped off the rocks into the water. And he says, I want to live my life like that. I want to live my life that way, jumping off rocks into water. Because life's not a problem to be solved. Life is an adventure to be lived. And I want to ask you the question, how do you want to live your life? Because we can live, kind of like, congratulations, by the way, on the passing of your test. Well done. Well, that wasn't your driving test. Was that your theory or your actual driving test? That's your actual, did you drive over the day? He's driving? Okay, still, just right. Doesn't, even if they've got the certificate, just don't, okay? So congratulations to Monique on passing her driving test. And Rebecca Kirk, that's not Rebecca Kirk, that's Rebecca Kirk's mommy. Rebecca graduated. She is now officially a nurse. She graduated yesterday, so I want to congratulate Rebecca on graduating. Living an adventure. Robert Proctor got himself a big motorbike, so he's looking to get out on a road on a motorbike, and they're taking steps. And so John Eldridge is saying, I don't want to live my life boxed in. I think life should be an adventure. And I wonder, how do you want to live your life? How do you want to live your life? Do you want to live it, all boxed in and everything's all set out, and this is the way you're supposed to live? And, we're now living in days where we're told, I've got to do if I go to a meeting, I'm sent a risk assessment of how the tea is going to be served. There's a risk assessment done for how the tea and coffee is going to be served for the person serving it. They've done a COVID test, and they're maybe going to be wearing gloves, and they've sanitized their hands, and there's this list of how we're supposed to act whenever we come into a crowd situation in these new days, and we're told how we should live. I can't live that way, church. I can't live in a world that does a risk assessment for making a cup of tea. That's not me. That's not how I want or how I can live my life. That's not me. I'm sorry, I can't fit into that mold. I believe that life is supposed to be an adventure. I think we're supposed to take a risk every once in a while. I've already shared with you my story about the conversation I had with the guy from NIE on his risk assessments and wearing his hard hat and standing at a doorway with me. I'll leave all that there. But I can't live my life that way. I want to live an adventurous life. Let me share with you very quickly some of my story and of what happened in my life, because I've already shared with you, in 1995, I was ready for jacking in church. I was done with God. I was done with church. And I was leaving to go to Canada. And on our first 2 days, we were supposed to go in March, and we ended up going in June. It was postponed. It was cancelled and put back to June of 1995. And I'm going with this mindset of, you know what, I'm done with church and I'm done with God. And on the first day that we were there, and we were told about this Billy Graham crusade that would be taking place in Toronto Sky Dome. And DC Talk were going to be there. And for anybody that was in the church in the 1990s, DC Talk were huge, and I absolutely loved DC Talk. And we were told this group is going to be there as part of this Billy Graham crusade, and I desperately wanted to go. And I remember going into the toilets and just saying, God, I really want to get there. If you can provide a way for me to get there and get back again, I would really appreciate it. That was my prayer. Later on that afternoon, a girl turns up and says, Johnny, we're going the whole way there. We'll get you there and we'll get you back. Do you want to go? I said, yes. So we jumped on the train and we headed down to Toronto Sky Dome. There should be hopefully a photograph with a group of there at in a baseball stadium. Yeah, that's it. I took that off of Facebook. This is a photograph of the actual event. I've got some photographs, but they're not going to come out very well on this here. So it stole this off Facebook. There apparently, I was reading during the week on this here, over 250,000 young people that were in Toronto Sky Dome. They were done I think about 5 nights of youth events. And on this particular night, DC Talker playing. I was only there for 2 nights in Toronto. So I was supposed to go in March, and we ended up not going. It was put back. And the actual day that I'm there in Toronto, this is happening. And I'm kind of like, that's the pitcher's mound. You can kind of see just underneath that banner. And I'm kind of like probably just at the end of the pitcher's mound. I remember where I was in and around that area. And I remember standing in this arena, 70,000 young people on this one night that are packed in, thousands outside that didn't get in. And I remember standing, looking around the arena at all these young people and thinking, my goodness, there's nothing like this happens back home. It would be amazing if we could do something like this back home. And there was something, nothing major, but something kind of tweaked inside of me just standing in Toronto Sky Dome and looking around. And in the 2 weeks that I was in other places, then we left Toronto and we went to a place called Brantford just outside of Toronto. And in the 2 weeks that I was there, I had gone with this mindset of God doesn't have a plan and a purpose for my life. There's no reason for me being on this earth. So therefore, I'm done with God and I'm done with church. That's me done. And 3 people come up to me and prophesied into my life on those 2 weeks. 3 people that didn't know each other and said, Johnny, every single one with the exact same message, Johnny, God's got a plan and a purpose for your life. And something broke inside of me. Something changed inside of me. Something like physically snapped off of me. The first message that I got, the first person that came up to me and says, Johnny, God's got a plan and a purpose for your life. Something broke inside of me. Something broke. And I then had a choice. What am I going to do with this message? Because I knew that it was God, because this was everything that I had struggled with. What am I going to do? What I had to do was I had to jump. I had to make a jump. And I remember making a deal with God. I said, God, okay, if this is you, brilliant, I'm on board. I'm all for it. But here's the problem. I'm not going to jump just so that I can sit in a chair for the rest of my life in church, just so that I can make up numbers in church. There's got to be more. There's got to be more to this Christian life. And I just don't want to be going to church, and I just don't want to attend church. I'm jumping. I'm all in. What have you got for me? A couple of months later, it was a month later, we came back from Canada in June, and I got involved in helping out a guy called Jim Bailey and doing some youth and kids work at the Hillsborough Bible Week. And I remember having this, because of the change that had taken place in my life, I remember thinking, my goodness, this is just ridiculous. Is this real? Is there a mistake here, God? Did you make a mistake? Because you begin to question what's going on. And I'd been given a verse, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. And I remember a week later, because I'd bought this book, I've shared this with you, I'd bought this book as like a daily reading for young people. I was only 19 at the time. And I remember sitting down saying, God, just confirm to me that what's happening is actually you and it's actually real. And he opened up on that date, on that day of that daily reading, and it was from Jeremiah 29:11. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't need any more. I'm on board. And from then on, God has taken me on this adventure. And it's really just been in preparing this message and kind of looking back that I've been able to see just some of the things that I've been able to be a part of and be involved in. And I remember whenever, shared about standing in this arena and just thinking I would love for stuff like this here to be happening back home. And God began to birth in me about youth events. And from then we got involved in a thing called Big Big House. We set up a thing called Big Big House up in the stadium where young people used to come from a number of different churches. And it was just amazing. It was so good. And by the way, for anybody that was hacked by my Facebook account, my apologies. I'm blaming Anita and Keith. I'll tell you why. Because I was talking with Keith and Anita about this on Friday. And I said, I've got some old photographs that I'm going to be showing. And then Keith talked about old photographs of Big Big House. And he says, I'll dig some out and I'll send some to you later. Lo and behold, later on that night, I get a message from Anita saying, look what I found. I click on the link and it turns out to be a virus or hacked or whatever. So when I'm sitting watching the Batman movie in the cinema and I'm getting a phone call from Boneyard, I'm getting 50, 60, 70 messages from everybody on my Facebook account and further afield. Johnny, your Facebook's been hacked. I know. And I'm having to repeat myself. So I put a thing on all in the middle of the Batman movie. My Facebook has been hacked. Please don't message me, but still the messages come in. Johnny, your Facebook's been hacked. I know, it's Anita's fault. Blame Anita. And so I thought that this was old photographs from Big House, but I don't know what else do we got here. So beyond 1995, so what I said, DC talk about being one of and I'm bragging on what God has done in my life. This is what I want to do for the next 5 or 10 minutes. I just want to brag on what God has done in my life. And the reason why I did it was because I jumped. And I want to encourage you today, before you leave this place, to make a declaration that you're going to jump. That you're going to jump. And what God did, I mean, you couldn't plan it, you couldn't purpose it. I don't know, it was maybe about a year or two later where DC Talk came to Belfast, and the guy that was doing the sound, he knew me and Johnny Prentice, and we were down, and he invited us in, and so we went in, and we hung out with DC Talk for that day whenever they were down in the Ulster Hall in Belfast. We hung out for the day with them, which was just, is there another couple of photographs? Listen, this might not mean a lot to you, but this means the world to me. There should be one of Michael Tate. That's Michael Tate with his leather pants on. I have mine on. I'm just behind the camera. And then one of me, and that's Kevin Smith. And this was just amazing, just totally unplanned, that God would just do something like this for one of his sons. And the journey then that I was taken on. So this is me in Zambia. I'm the one in the middle. Just in case you're wondering, Dixon and Alice here, did they make it out today? No? Dixon, bless you, bro. Zambian brothers and sisters. So we went to Ndola. That's me again. Yeah, I tell you, you can't get any whiter than me, honestly. You really can't get any whiter than me. It's ridiculous. And then that's me in Alaska. And just being able to go to Alaska. And the next one, I think, is probably me in a school. So Bill Pygaran, if you remember, we've had the Native Americans here, and Bill, crazy drummer, long-haired Native crazy drummer. And Bill does all this stuff in schools, and so I went with him one day, and he gives me this T-shirt, and he says, Johnny, why don't you share today? And it was like, about to start within the next 2 minutes, and so there's like hundreds and hundreds of young people that are all gathered. And in these different parts of Alaska, mental health is a major issue, and suicide is a major issue. And so I was able to share with a number of the young people there. That's me with my piece. All right? So don't anybody be trying anything. Yeah? Whenever you go to Texas and Alaska, I mean, it's, they're probably two of the worst states for it. But see the guns they have. Oh, my goodness. So Rob, that's in Rob's house, and Rob's got this safe that's just, there's photographs of me with AK-47s, with Russian rifles, and he's just got all these, I don't know, it's just ridiculous, and I'm looking at it going, what the, oh dear. So they're like, here, put this on and carry this gun. Okay, let me take your photograph, So there's all these photographs of me with all these guns. Yeah, we've had a number of Bethel teams with us, and David Nerona, who does Bethel TV, took me around Bethel Music and that there, and everything that was going on there. And what's the next one? Yeah, doing church in between the gates. I mean, outside there is just, for this church, I don't think there's anywhere like it in the world. I really don't, church. You got to understand just the significance of this building and of where we are at geographically, of the falls and the Shankill, of the gates at the side. And so being able to do some church outside in between the gates. And if you remember, whenever standing in the Toronto Sky Dome and just thinking I would love to do events like this back home. And I've been able to be involved in so many things like Big House and so many other events that we just don't have time to go through everything. And that's here. Those are events that have taken place in this hall. The first time that Bethel came here, it was standing room only. There was over 1,000 people gathered in this, squeezed into this, what was a sauna that night where you could hardly breathe. But what an amazing number of nights we've had in this place. And that's me in Jersey Shore, in New Jersey, on the east coast of America, working with some young people and ministering with some young people who were from Philly. And then on my way home, that's New York City. That's Times Square down there, you can see. And so God has taken me, I mean, that's just a few snapshots of what God has done in me and in my life. I could keep you here for hours just talking about so many memories that I have of where God has taken me, different places and people that I have met. I would love to have thrown up a photograph of the Eubanks. Dave Eubank I met in Alaska. Dave was in the U.S. Army, and Dave now runs this thing in Myanmar. What's the other name for Myanmar? Can we remember? Burma Rangers. If you get a chance, go on and look up for the Burma Rangers. And they go into Burma and into Myanmar, and they rescue people. He's got 2 daughters and a son, and even from like they were teenagers, they've been driving ambulances for him as he rescues people. CNN did a story on him. They produced a movie, the Burma Rangers movie. Go on and check it out. Just the amount of people it's just phenomenal, absolutely incredible. And this is the journey that God has taken me on in my life. As I look back and as I was studying this here, I began just to think about my life and about the adventure that God has taken me on. From someone who really just didn't want to be here, to going on this adventure. And I want to let you know that it's available for every single one of you. You may not get to go to New York and to preach in different places and to go to Alaska or anything like that there. But God's got a plan and a purpose for your life. When Jesus is on this earth and he's just about to begin his ministry, and Andrew introduces Peter, his brother, to Jesus and thinks, I think this could be the Messiah. And then there comes this point where Jesus is walking along the shore where the fishermen, Peter and Andrew and James and John, they're mending their nets, have been out fishing, but they haven't caught anything. And there's this interaction between Jesus and Peter, and Jesus gets into Peter's boat. And there's this point where Jesus turns to Peter and says to Peter, follow me. Follow me, Peter, and I will make you fishers of men. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. This was an invitation given by Jesus to Peter. Follow me, Peter, and I'll make you fishers of men. Notice that Jesus doesn't turn up to Peter and say, Peter, you must be born again, or you're not going to get into heaven. Peter, if you want to get into heaven, and you've got to give your life to me, Peter, you got to pray this prayer. Come into my heart, Lord Jesus. Come in today, come in to stay. Come into my heart, Lord Jesus. Jesus doesn't talk to him about heaven and hell. He doesn't talk to him about eternity or anything like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Believe me, that's what we preach in this place. I've preached it myself. We got to be preaching about eternity. But Jesus doesn't approach Peter that way. Jesus goes to Peter and says, Peter, follow me, and I will make you. Follow me, and I will make you. Jesus wants to make you. You finish off that sentence. You finish off that invitation. You finish off whatever it is that God has sent to you. But he's given an invitation. Follow me, and I will make you. What is it? For Peter, who was a fisherman, I'm going to make you a fisher of men, Peter. Your brother Andrew, James, and John, follow me, guys. I'm going to make you fishers of men. In other words, there's an opportunity here where you've now got to jump. Because you've got a choice to make, guys. You can either stay in your boats, do your fishing, do your risk assessment for before you go out into the boat. I was watching a basketball game the other day by students in America, young people, teenagers in America. They had their masks on while they're playing basketball. So what had to happen was, before that, somebody has to write out a risk assessment. So in order for them to play, they must wear their mask. Now, half of them were wearing it around their chin, like most people do these days. But we're living in a box. And there were people in Jesus' day that were living in a religious box. And Jesus came and blew all of that out of the water. That's why they crucified him, because he didn't fit into their religious mold. And he steps up to Peter and he says, follow me, and I'll make you a fisher. In other words, there's an invitation for a life of adventure here, Peter. And you've got a choice. You can either stay here, stay in your boat, do your fishing day in, day out, or maybe, just maybe, you can come with me and there's an adventure for you. What do you want, Peter? What do you want to do? The most amazing thing about Jesus calling these guys, you got to understand again the Jewish system and the Jewish religious system, and how that every young boy would be part of a school, would be enrolled in a school, and there would be 3 stages to the school. And if you failed at any stage, then you would be sent home. It was every family's dream and every boy's dream to make it through the third stage, and for a rabbi to come to you, and for a rabbi to select you, and for a rabbi to say to you, follow me. That was the dream of every young Jewish boy in the days of Jesus. And if you failed, as Kippers was talking about, you were sent home. You were sent back to your family to become a part of your family's business. For some people, it meant fishing. For others, maybe it meant carpentry. I don't know how Jesus ended up following in his father's footsteps as a carpenter, but that's what he did. But for these men, for Peter and Andrew and James and John, they were failures. They were rejects. Whenever you look at the disciples that Jesus called together, it's just, this was not a bunch of hoodlums that you would put together to make a team, because they would have been fighting with each other. I mean, you got Peter and Andrew, James and John, who are fishermen, who are paying taxes to the Romans. And then you got Matthew, who's collecting taxes for the Romans. And then you got Judas Iscariot and Simon the Zealot, who wanted to overthrow the Romans by force. They wanted to bomb them out. And this was the collection that Jesus, is this the best you can do, Jesus? But this was the ones that Jesus chose. He purposely chose these men. Follow me, and I will make you. Follow me, and I'm going to take you on an adventure. And this is what Jesus did for these people. Worship team, come. I'm going to finish. John Eldridge tells a story of how whenever he's just a young man, he's just newly married, and he's got this desire to be like a writer and to be going out and to do speaking engagements. But he's just married, and he gets this job offer. And the job offer that he gets is an incredible job offer. I mean, this was something that you just didn't turn down. And he's kind of like torn, because in order to pursue his dreams, he's got to go to college and he's got to get a certain certificate that's going to cost money. Or he could take the job that's going to pay a heck of a lot of money, and it's going to set him up in security. And this is the most obvious choice. Go take the job. But he wants to follow his dreams. And he's torn. And he talks about going up a mountain, and as he does on a number of occasions, and just spending time with God for a weekend and praying to God. And he hears God speak to him, and God says, tell him, John, take the job if you want. He says, it won't be a sin if you take that job, but it's going to kill you. It's going to kill you, John, because it's not what's in your DNA. That's not how you want to live your life. Remember how he talked, I want to live my life this way, jumping off rocks. And he goes back to his wife and he says, I got to turn the job down. She's okay with it. A day later, a few days later, the college phones, and because he's enrolled in the college course, and they're looking money from him, and he doesn't have any money. He could either have been just sitting pretty, brilliant job, no need for, no money issues, nothing like that there. But he's in this place where he's like, I need money. And they're looking for the money for the course. He says, right, okay, I'll get it for you. He doesn't know where it's going to come from. And a day later, he gets a phone call from a friend saying, John, some of us have been praying about your situation. We're going to pay off your college tuition. You go chase your dreams. You go chase your dreams. Well, where do you want to live? Do you want to live boxed in? This is how it should be done. You got to walk a certain way. You got to talk a certain way. You got to behave a certain way. You got to fit into this mold. And what Jesus does is he calls disciples, and they follow him. He breaks that mold into a million pieces. And he takes his young disciples on an adventure. And they have to jump. They have to jump. They have to leave their boats behind. On 3 occasions, Peter has to jump out of a boat. The first time to follow Jesus, the second time he walks on water, and then the third time after the resurrection, and Jesus is on the shore and he's cooking fish, and the disciples are fishing, and Peter sees him and he jumps out of the boat and swims towards Jesus. I think there's something in that. And what have you got to leave behind to run your adventure? And the Bible is just filled with stories like that of people who ran their adventure. God is calling every single one of us to a life of adventure, to your adventure. It's not my adventure. I'm living my adventure. I can't wait to, in some way, hopefully try and get back on a plane and maybe head back again to Alaska or to LA or New York or wherever. I want to do that again. I'm going to go up in Easter and going to jump off that rock again, if anybody wants to join me, as long as it's a nice day. Because that's how I want to live my life. We're told, when are you going to settle down? When are you going to get married and settle down? Where does that say that in the Bible? Where does it say in the Bible you got to get married and settle down? In fact, if anything, Paul actually said, no, don't get married. Paul's reason for getting married, if you want to have sex, then go get married. That was Paul's reason. You know, if you're burning with your desires, then get married. But Paul actually encourages us to try and stay single for as long as you can, because you're going to have a lot more freedom to do whatever you want to do and to serve the purposes of God. And he calls us to a life of adventure. Let me finish with this. Hebrews chapter 12. Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders, the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, or let us run with patience the race marked out for us. To run, the word that Paul uses, to run, means to run in such a way that you're actually sprinting and where two of your feet are never on the ground at the same time. It's about running with everything that you've got in order to obtain, to achieve, to get your hands on an objective or a goal. So when Paul's telling us run, he's saying, I want you to run as hard as you can. I want you to run as fast as you can. I want you to run with everything that you've got. He says run with perseverance or run with patience. It implies someone who is resolute and who doesn't give up. Who's willing to stand firm in the midst of everything that would come against you. You're standing strong. I will not give up. I will not step away. I will not step back. I will continue to move forward. Run with perseverance. Don't give up. The race. Paul uses the word agona. For race, he uses the word agona, which is where we get agony from. And it denotes, it depicts, it talks about to wrestle or to struggle. Paul's actually referring to running in a struggle. Run your race, run your struggle. Stand firm in your struggle, in your wrestling, stand firm. Keep moving forward, run with everything you've got. The race marked out for you. For you. For you. A plan, a purpose, a destiny, an adventure. I don't know what it is. May not be traveling very far. Could be within your own community. Could be within your own family. But God is calling you to adventure. Follow me, and I will make you. Follow me, and I will make you. Will you stand to your feet, please? Follow me, and I will make you. Does he want to make of you? What adventure does he want to take you on? I hope you get excited about that. That God has an adventure marked out for you. A life of adventure. It begins at the cross, like everything, it begins at the cross. It begins with surrendering your life to Jesus Christ. Committing your life to Him. He's saying, follow me. So will you jump and follow Him? For those that are in this place today and you're not Christians, will you jump and will you follow Him? I'm going to pray a very simple prayer. I'm going to ask you to pray this prayer after me. You repeat this prayer. If you're saying, yes, I'm going to jump, I'm going to follow him, I'm going to live this life of adventure, then you repeat this prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for calling me to follow you. Today, I answer that call and I will follow you. With everything that I have, I will follow you. Come and save me, Lord. Come and redeem me, Lord. Come and set me free, Lord. Come and fill me with your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name.